Yeah, I want to explain something about this gold and silver way in a way I don't think anybody's getting at. First off, when Ron Paul talks about gold is money and all that kind of stuff, and the Austrian school of economics, and that's a bunch of garbage. Okay, I mean, it's true in some ways, but it's really missing the point. I'm going to just get right to the point where the American people are getting scammed with the Federal Reserve is that they took out of the hands of the Congress and they gave it to the bankers, issuing money and credit. That's the problem in a nutshell. Money does not exactly have to have pure intrinsic value to work. It can be paper, it can be fiat. Thing is, it has to be issued, here's the key phrase, interest free, and by the Congress, which is per the Constitution. It can be paper in that respect. The problem is our paper currency is not issued by the Congress and it does not come interest free. It's lent to the government. So who pays back the interest? But due to the lending, the people. You see, even if you went to a gold standard and all the central banks, they had gold, it's a fact that you're keeping the money supply, the people that have, control the money supply out of the hands of the people, the representatives, the House of Representatives in Congress. That's the problem in a nutshell. It's like, I guess it's better if it's backed by a broad range of commodities. You wouldn't want to have it just backed by gold. I mean, it's you want to have it with a host of different commodities anyway. But the thing is, you're always going to have like a representation of the physical item anyway. You're not going to be, hauling around gold and silver. You're not going to be, you're going to be using electrons to transmit money and stuff like that. You're going to be using paper and that type of stuff. The thing is, they took it out of the hands of Congress. That's the real problem. You see, if all the big bucks guys have gold and they lend it to you at interest, how the hell are you going to pay it back with interest? With the interest, paying back the principal and the interest, it's almost impossible, right? That's the problem. It should not have interest attached to it. Money should be coined or printed or come into existence at congressional level, interest free. So in other words, if they wanted to go fix all the bridges or something in the United States, fix all the water dams and hydroelectric power plants, and they want to issue a bunch of money to do that, they just do it at Congress without interest, right? There's no, it's not coming from the Federal Reserve. Now, I'm going to give you a good example of what can happen to a currency. And Russia's an excellent example, okay? It's an excellent example because before Bolshevism, before they had the communist revolution in Russia, I mean, yeah, they had problems with their czars and stuff. Some are good, some are bad. But they had a stable currency before that. They had a stable currency. And it was stable for hundreds of years prior to the communist revolution. Now, the problem is in the United States, you notice what's going on. We're going more towards like socialism and communism. And I pointed out Obamacare is more like, it's not really about care, it's about total control, right? It's based upon the old Soviet model. But as we move towards socialism or communism or whatever the hell you want to call it, more government control, and the banks are issuing credit, basically lending money to the government. It's not coming directly. It's not being made at the government itself. It's being lent to the government, and they created it out of thin air. Well, let me look at this example, what happened in Russia. And this is really why you have to have gold and silver, because it's going to come unexpectedly. I think this pullback we got now is akin to the 1975-1976 pullback we had in silver and gold back at that time. But if you look back at Russia's example, they had from January 1922 to the whole year of 1922, they issued one new ruble for 10,000 rubles. So it got devalued by 10,000 times. These are extreme examples, but I'll go over what happened in less than 100 years in Russia. Then A couple years later, it was 100 to 1, 100 to 1. So it got devalued 10,000 to 1, then 100 to 1. They reissued currencies. And then from 1924 to 47, they had 50,000 rubles to 1. One new issue was 50,000 to the old issue. And then between 1947 and 1961, over a period of 14 years, I guess that is, they went 10 to 1, 10 to 1, okay? And then they had a significant amount of inflation in the 1990s after, supposedly the Soviet Union all fell apart. And it was 1,000 to 1. They went to 1,000 to 1. So if you take all those denominations, it's, if you go from the rubles from like say 1917 when they had the Bolshevik Revolution, you would need 20 quadrillion of them to equal 1 ruble today. 20 quadrillion of the old rubles equals 1 ruble today. And that is, to give you an example, it's 16 zeros after 2, which is 20 million billion. So it's a billion times 20 million. It's a ridiculous amount of numbers. It's 2 with 16 zeros after it. So I don't know. Tell me, is anybody's wealth like that? Absolutely not. No way in hell. So the Russians actually lost everything several times over, and the only reason they survived during that less than 100 years, I guess, is because they knew how to grow their own food and they're very much autonomous. They can survive by doing their own stuff. The Russian people are pretty hardy. Now, I did point out about the Russian population is if you have this big sliver of the pie here, if you could see this, it's almost 94% have less than $10,000 total net worth, and it's 8/100ths of 1%. 8/100ths of 1%, less than 1 basis point of 1 basis point. 110 multi-billionaires out of 143 million people have 35% of the wealth, right? Now, that is not anywhere, they're like ridiculously, different from the United States, but this is the direction the elite in the West are moving towards. And it's also, when Russia Today is also criticizing us, you got to remember where it's coming from. It's coming from this garbage too. The actual Russia Today, and I'm going to point this out in this video too, because Russia Today actually has an A rating on YouTube. It's extremely influential, right? It's very, 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 very influential. It's actually a very fast-growing news network, and it's because they bring out stories about the West that are true. But they don't bring out any stories about the garbage going on over in Russia, which is actually, many times worse. But I have to tell you this, the fact that that's being allowed and it's not being counterattacked as much as it should be is, I'd say should be, is because the elite in the United States want you to run in that direction as a better alternative. That's what's going on, because when there's going to be change due to catastrophic problems, they're going to have you, it's going to be solutions based upon that model, which is not the 1%, it's the one sliver of, it's 8/100,000ths of 1% own 35% of the wealth in Russia. But the reason you're keeping silver and gold, especially silver, because it's a commodity that's used. It's, in other words, they can freaking screw at you and say you can't own gold, but it's pretty much impossible to do with silver because it's used in industry everywhere, Well, you're talking a period from 1922 to say, that's 91 years, right? In 91 years, the currency was devalued 20 trillion times. Quadrillion times. 20 million billion times. 20 quadrillion times. I mean, just one devaluation of, 1 to 4 is going to clobber the hell out of you. So if you had silver, That's, it comes on unexpectedly. It comes on unexpectedly. It's not like the inflation in some cases happened a little bit at a time, but in some cases it happened extremely fast. It was only a 6-month period or a 1-year period, because, and the reason it stops going up, like in other words, from January 1st, well, for the whole entire calendar year of 1922, the reason it stops going 1 new ruble for 10,000 old rubles, the reason it stops is because people got nothing left. They're done. They're done. It's zero. Basically, the money's zero. That's why the inflation stops, because they're growing their own food and they're not buying anything. They're not buying anything. The economy totally stops. So this is really why you're buying silver and gold for this type of moment, because as the United States moves more towards socialism, it's something like, maybe not this extreme, I don't think it's going to be that extreme, but you're going to see some serious inflation. And for Americans, it's going to seem extremely extreme. Extremely extreme. But like I said, going back to square one, the whole problem with the currency is not so much that it's paper or electrons. It's not controlled by the House of Representatives in the Congress. It's not starting with them. I could say, this piece of paper is going to be, some kind of, it's going to have a symbol on it. It's going to have like gold leaf ink in it and something. And this is going to be the medium of exchange. And as the House of Representatives is going to issue this for legal tender, right? And they're going to use this to pay people and everything like that, and the government to do whatever work needs to be done, or public works projects and stuff. That can actually work. It doesn't even have to be gold. It can be fiat money. The problem is, problem is today, the money arises with the Federal Reserve. It gets lent to the government, and its interest is attached to it. That's the problem. See, Ron Paul doesn't really tell you that exactly, does he? He makes it sound like the whole solution is gold. Now, I think eventually gold and silver and everything is going to go right through the roof due to some of these things I'm talking about here. But the big buyers are going to be, maybe like if you look at this chart, we have maybe the 1%. This is the Russian chart, but there's a sliver of people, maybe like the top 8% in the country. In the United States, they got maybe some millions, but like they're not the 1%. They're going to be the ones buying this stuff, panicking at higher rates, and it's actually going to transfer the upper middle class or the semi-wealthy money into the elite. They're going to get screwed. That's where I think like people like actually Farber is going to be selling them the gold and stuff. He's going to make out like a fat rat, man. I mean, the guys that are loaded in gold right now, like Eric Sprott, he's 80% precious metals. They're going to have to sell to somebody, and when they sell, it's not going to be the vast majority of people who can't afford it. It's going to be actually the upper middle class. They'll be buying it later on. Because actually most of the upper middle classes totally avoided this stuff. They totally avoid it. They're going to be the only ones with the money to buy it. And what it's going to do is actually transfer wealth to the upper elite. And I guess Eric Sprott and Mark Farber are going to start getting in that category pretty soon, because the next time they sell off at fantastic gains with all the investments they have, they're going to make out like crazy. But you're being misinformed when you're being told that gold has to be what backs the currency. If gold was backing the currency and you still had central banks lending money to the government at interest, we're still screwed. That's really not, see what I'm saying? It's got to be interest free. That's why you got to have the money. That's why it's in the Constitution. It's the Congress, the House of Representatives starts the coinage of money. They use the term coinage because that's all that was understood, but they could create money from electronically or through printing in Congress. Then it's okay. then we're fine. As long as it's issued without interest. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. See, this Austrian school of economics is a bunch of bullshit, too. It is. It is. I don't trust all the gold pundits and stuff like that. They are in there to sell you something. Right now, it's cheap. I don't think it's going to keep pulling back. I think in 2014, there's going to be a run-up in the metals. But that's not going to be the final run-up. I think there's going to be a run-up in the metals. It seems like every 3 years. And then in 2015, or somewhere maybe like late 2014, it's going to crash. When it gets too far ahead of itself, it's going to crash. But the real run-up in the metals is going to be several years away. I think it's 2017, 2018, around that time. And what's going to happen then is going to be a transfer of wealth from the upper middle class to the upper elite. So that's how I see it's played out. But you know, what really needs to be done is go back to square one. Congress coins money. Congress prints money. Congress creates money electronically. No interest. No interest. You don't have somebody in the Federal Reserve creating money and lending it to the government. That's a scam. That's the problem. And they don't really tell you that. They make it sound like gold is the solution. Well, if the central bank has all the gold and they lend it to you at interest, guess what? The people are still screwed, right? As a matter of fact, if the central bank had all the gold in the world and the people said, the hell with the gold, because actually gold, what the hell good is it, really? Think about it. What good is it? If the money came directly from the Congress and it was paper and it had no interest attached, no interest at all, you didn't have to pay back anything, that would make that would break the whole freaking central banksters all the way. That would do it. And see, that's a point these guys ain't saying. They're making it sound like gold is the solution. That's why I say eventually all these guys on the top of the gold, with a lot of gold and stuff, they're going to basically rip off the upper middle class and it's going to go right into their pockets. So I don't know. It's maybe hopefully I got this through clearly enough. But again, I'm saying it over and over again. The whole point is the money has to be come into being interest free. It does not necessarily have to have intrinsic value. I mean, it's better if it's backed by something. It has intrinsic value. Yes, it is better. But if it's coming directly, in other words, if the money comes from the Congress itself and they vote a lot of money for a lot of projects and they create inflation, as long as people understand that that's going to create inflation, they can tell their House of Representatives, hey, back off. But the thing is, there's no interest. There's no interest. That's the whole key. That's the whole key. Interest, fees, and all this other bullshit. You want to avoid that as much as possible. That's a point nobody's looking at. That's a point that nobody's looking at. But the way the game's going, I think there is going to be a major devaluation in the dollar. It's not going to go away to oblivion like the ruble, I don't think. But it's going to get devalued. I mean, this is an extreme example of the ruble. But when it happens suddenly. You're not prepared. I mean, that's just how it is. It's almost like, is there going to be a tornado someday? Maybe. If you're not prepared, well, tough luck, buddy. You know what I mean? Tough luck. So that's what you got silver and gold for. And, people back in Russia's time, if they had 1917, they had, several thousand ounces of silver, and they had the same amount in 2013, well, they'd be fine, wouldn't they? They'd be fine, wouldn't they? Because, everything's going along nice and steady, and then the hyperinflation goes like a rocket. And the reason it stops is because people got nothing left. It's done. They're done. They got nothing. The currency went basically to zero. I don't think that's what's going to happen in the United States. But I think it's going to drop. The currency will drop. Like I said, I want to repeat this again. I think there's going to be a run-up in the metals in 2014. That's not going to be where silver goes to $100 an ounce. I think it's going to break new records. It's going to do it unexpectedly. You're going to hear all the drama freaks come out. And then it's going to correct again. But I think the big run up is going to come maybe 2017, 2018. And I would expect silver to be like $150 to $200 an ounce or something. Crazy amount like that. It's going to go up there quite a bit. But, they'll be predicting $3,000 an ounce or something at that time. If that happens, I think, well, there really have to be something outlandish that would happen that the elite don't expect too. They would lose control too. But just watch out, because the pundits that tell you about gold standard and all this stuff in the Austrian School of Economics, they got a game they're playing too. They want to sell you gold later on at a high price. That's what their game is. So, and fiat money can work. Like I said, it's got to be interest free, and it has to come from the Congress itself, not from the some bankster someplace lending money to the government at interest rates, which the people pay back through taxation. That system, it's a no-win solution for the people. That's obvious.